Okay, so you might remember last month that we took a good long look at the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro, but the iPhone 12 family is a little bigger than that. So welcome to the absolutely minute iPhone 12 mini and the colossal iPhone 12 Pro Max, the two extreme ends of it. This is the mini unboxing in case you're interested. You get the same stuff inside as with the iPhone 12, so charging cable and insert. The phone is adorable. It's literally like the iPhone 12 had a baby. But I want to focus on the Pro Max for 3 reasons. 1, I'm just generally someone who likes big phones with big batteries. 2, my main phone for the last 6 months has been the 11 Pro Max, so this is the natural successor. And 3, because for this year in particular, the Pro Max is not just a big version of the Pro, like it has been in the past. This is a phone that can do more. This is more like the iPhone 12 Ultra. So I was properly excited for this. Literally the moment it dropped through my door, I grabbed it, legged it upstairs, fumbled around with my camera, whacked my lights on, and just dived straight in. I think within 40 minutes of this entering the premises, I'd completely switched over to it. Because it's always exciting testing new phones. I completely love my job, but it's especially exciting when you know that it's a phone you're going to be using as your main phone. So anyways, as you'd expect, it's a wider and taller box than the normal 12 Pro. Actually, very slightly thicker too. Being a Pro phone, you get the Pro black packaging, and the colour accents will match whatever colour option you're getting. So in my case, gold. And I gotta say, the gold here, on the rims and surrounding the cameras, is spot on, I love it. But the actual gold on the back plate itself, I kind of wish I had a bit more life to it. In a lot of lighting conditions, I would almost struggle to call that gold. And that's kind of it, there's nothing inside that you don't already get with the normal 12 Pro. However, the more I've used this phone, the more I'm convinced that this is the one to get. The Pro Max is so much more of a better phone than the Pro that it never really makes sense to get the Pro. With just one tiny little asterisk. The one fear that I did have about the 12 Pro Max, right from the very start, has kinda come true. See, one of the big changes with the entire iPhone 12 lineup is this new flat design. Not pretty much flat, not slightly curved, just bang, bang, flat. And it's not lost on me. You know, every time I take out the iPhone 12, even a month on, I still think to myself, yeah, that's a pretty suave looking phone. But at the same time, it is kind of confusing. Because if you look around, you'll notice that generally speaking, tech is moving towards curvature, towards adapting to the human form, and just feeling really organically woven into our lives. You'll notice how phones now are softer and smoother, how earphones are now built around the actual shapes of our ears, how cars are more streamlined and comfortable. The iPhone 12 design kind of feels at odds with that. And to be honest, it's not a big deal on the smaller iPhone 12. But it's just that the iPhone 12 Pro Max is a combination of sharp design, the dense stainless steel rim that the Pro phones get, and the fact that it's not a small phone. In fact, this thing has the largest physical footprint of any iPhone ever, thanks to an even larger 6.7-inch display versus last year's 6.5. And the buttons are also higher up, so there might be a bit of extra hand shuffling involved every now and again. It is a bit slimmer than last year, but yeah, I mean, there has never been an iPhone whose presence is more felt. Okay, here's the important thing though. The iPhone 12 Pro Max is worth it. So normally when Apple releases iPhones, you might know this, they tend to just release the entire lineup at once. This year they didn't do that. They released the first 2 phones in October, the second phone's just now. And from a business perspective, I think it's a really smart idea. It gives Apple time to make sure they have enough stock of each, but also it gives them 2 separate waves of coverage, so that each one of these 4 phones gets its own time in the spotlight. But what it's meant for me is that I've been using a phone that I probably wouldn't have otherwise picked. I would have just gone for the big one, but instead, I've been using the small one. And having had that time to properly use this before switching to the iPhone 12 Pro Max has made me realize that there's an absolutely enormous difference between the two. Don't get me wrong, I've been sort of happy on the 12 Pro. I'm getting 5G signal in places I wasn't expecting to. It's so fast, but in the end it is a small phone with a small battery. And when you factor in the extra drain that comes from having 5G on it, it doesn't last nearly as long as the iPhone I'd come from. And yes, the cameras are an improvement, but not what I'd call next generation, just a whole load of small refinements. So, thankfully, the iPhone 12 Pro Max is the upgrade that I wanted. I've got a full battery comparison coming very soon, so a sub for that would be absolutely grand, but importantly, it lasts long enough. It's enough that I can use my 5G, I can enjoy videos on a big screen all day, and not have that voice in the back of my head telling me, Aaron, don't forget the power bank. Yes, there is a larger display here to power, but the battery is proportionally even larger. And because the screen is larger, while the bezels have remained about the same size, it's a more visually impressive phone, as in the screen to body ratio is higher. You've got a speaker system that sounds a little louder and fuller, thanks to just having more room to be able to push sound out of. It's kind of weird that Apple didn't mention this. And finally, we have a camera system that does feel next generation. Like, for me, the iPhone 12 Pro Max camera is a bigger jump over the iPhone 12 Pro camera than the 12 Pro is over last year's iPhones. Or in other words, the difference in camera quality within the 12 generation is bigger than the difference between the 12 and the 11 generation. You've got more zoom, 2.5 times optical zoom, instead of the 2 times you get on every other Pro iPhone. Although, the difference that this makes, I've got to say, is subtle. It basically means that you can get to about 12 times zoom with the same quality as you used to be able to get to 10 times with. We've also got sensor shift stabilization, otherwise known as in-body stabilization. So usually the way it works with cameras is that the lens has the ability to move slightly, to kind of counteract the shake of your hands. This takes that a step further and moves the camera sensor itself. Although, it is kind of a weird feature to have on a phone, because the main benefit of this on cameras is that it allows you to swap lenses freely and still keep your stabilization. But obviously being a phone, you're not going to be swapping lenses very often. So it leads to 3 perks, but they're all quite subtle. One is just the fact that it kind of helps to counteract the fact that there is a bigger, heavier sensor on this phone than all other iPhones. 2, it's slightly better at also adjusting for jittering. So if you were filming while sitting in a car, for example, that gentle rumbling motion seems to be a bit less noticeable here. And the third thing is that because your lens is now locked in place and it's just the sensor behind that's moving, it plays a little nicer with third-party accessories, like gimbals or clip-on lenses. But by far the most important improvement is the fact that the main camera sensor is almost 50% bigger than the one on the normal iPhone 12 Pro. And this in itself brings 5 separate benefits. 1, slightly more detail. The fact that it can process more light now means it can gather just a bit more information. 2, the extra light you're getting makes more and more of a difference the darker you get. And so as you get to nighttime, it is the difference between, that photo's looking a bit rough, to, yeah, actually, it's kind of comfortable. It can also shoot those night mode shots a little faster. In an environment where the iPhone 12 Pro might need to be held still for 10 seconds, this phone might be able to do it in 3. Number 4, it's got even better dynamic range. So here, for example, if you look at the really bright area inside the light bulb, the 12 Pro Max can control the highlights a bit better than the 12 Pro can. And finally, most importantly for me, is improved depth of field. So you can take photos without using portrait mode and still get this lovely separation of foreground and background. I think within 10 minutes of using this camera, I decided, okay, we've got to do a full comparison versus the best smartphone cameras out there. That video is actually coming to you tomorrow. Now, there's one more important thing here. It's nothing to do with specs or cameras or software. The software experience is basically the same. It's iOS 14. And I do like it. I love the new Siri and how it doesn't take up the entire screen. Widgets are a nice touch, but still fairly limited versus what Android can do. Probably the biggest thing for me is actually just picture-in-picture. You can watch your Netflix shows while browsing Instagram, for example. But here's the kicker. I've already said that I think the iPhone 12 Pro Max is enough of a jump ahead of the Pro to be considered Apple's Ultra phone, its competitor to the Ultras from Samsung and Huawei. But unusually, this phone doesn't really carry the Ultra price premium. Now bear with me here because Apple's pricing is a bit all over the place around the world. Like in India, this phone is something like 30% more expensive than the Galaxy S20 Ultra. That's the kind of price gap that's quite hard to justify. In the UK, these two phones are exactly the same price, to the penny, in which case I would say, if you're considering the iPhone 12 Pro Max, I can recommend it. And then you've got the US, in which it's almost 30% cheaper than an equivalent Samsung, where for a lot of people it then becomes a complete no-brainer. So the price of Apple products versus those of other companies, it varies a lot based on the country. But the one thing that's quite consistent is the fact that the price of the 12 Pro Max versus the price of the 12 Pro, Apple's own phone, is not a big price jump. If you look at Samsung or Huawei, their Ultra flagships are both something like $300 to $400 more than their baseline flagships. The gap between the iPhones is $100. Now that doesn't necessarily mean the 12 Pro Max is amazing value versus Samsung, but what it does mean is that if you find yourself considering the 12 Pro, I think it would be wise to either save a bit and go for the normal 12 with very little compromise, this, or just go all in and get the Pro Max. You get a bigger, higher resolution display, you get better audio, you get better battery life in a generation that, let's face it, kinda needs it thanks to the introduction of 5G, and you get more of a camera improvement than Apple often makes between generations. So if you were wondering, this is why I never made a full review of the smaller Pro. Literally the moment I saw the Pro Max get announced, and the fact that it was only $100 more, I kind of already suspected I was going to come to this conclusion anyway. So I just decided to wait until I had the Pro Max so I could be sure. If you enjoyed this video, a sub would be incredible. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you tomorrow.